Mark.
I just ate a piping hot mushroom and it's currently stuck right here burning my lungs. Here we are about to make mushroom carbonara, which is a meatless version of the classic dish, which normally would call for guanciale, pancetta, or sometimes bacon. But we've taken the meat out of it. Don't worry, there's still plenty of cheese and eggs. And instead, we're using mushrooms, which have a ton of depth of flavor. I don't want to call them a meat substitute, but they can certainly hold their own in this dish. So I'm starting with a good amount of mushrooms. These are cremini, and I'm going to take all of these tough stems off and save them for stock. And then any of them that are large, we will tear into quarters. And any of them that are smaller, we'll just tear in half. The most important part of this recipe is waiting patiently to develop good color on the mushrooms. So you guys have probably all heard about the fear of overcrowding your pan when you cook mushrooms, and it's not a thing, but you actually don't have to cook mushrooms in batches and worry about overcrowding the pan as long as you cook them for a long time and allow all of the moisture to evaporate off. So I'm not going to cook these in 3 different batches, making sure that none of them are touching the way you'll see in some recipes. I'm going to add them all at once, and we're going to just be patient and wait until all of the moisture within them cooks off and they begin to brown. And it will happen, and it's a beautiful thing when it does. So you could use fancy mushrooms if you wanted to, but the thing that I like about this dish is that these are just cremini mushrooms. They're widely available, they're not that expensive, and we're going to coax a lot of flavor out of them. All right, so these are all relatively similar in size. So we'll set them aside, and then there are some other aromatics that are going into this as well, and that is a good amount of garlic and some shallots. So the trifecta of these three ingredients together is what creates a lot of depth of flavor in the absence of meat. I have 2 medium shallots. So finely chopping a shallot, you do the exact same way you would an onion. You make a bunch of small crosswise slits and then perpendicular slits as well, avoiding the root end so that it all stays intact. And then you just cut across the same way you would an onion to create that crosshatch pattern that gives you a nice even dice. So lightly smash and peel 6 garlic cloves. I'm going to thinly slice these, and that's because I don't want to get a big chunk of garlic in my mouth as I'm eating a bite of pasta. So, and then I have a small bunch of parsley here, and I'll pick all of the tender stems and leaves off of it, and then we'll chop that, and that'll be what we finish the dish with. Okay, and then I'm just gonna coarsely chop this. So I'm getting all of the ingredient prep out of the way here in the beginning, because once we head over the stove, this dish comes together pretty quickly. So you want to have everything at the ready. Okay, so the beauty of this sauce comes from the eggs and the cheese and the pasta water and how they all come together over heat to create a really rich, yellow, thick, delicious sauce. So for a 1-pound box of pasta, I'm going to use 5 egg yolks and 1 whole egg. The egg yolks are going to help create that rich, yellow, glossy, saucy. 4 whole yolks, 1 egg, whisking just till it's homogeneous. So this is 4 ounces of finely grated parm. And you'll see it'll start to get nice and thick. And to this I'm going to add 1.5 teaspoons of black pepper, which is a lot of black pepper, but that's what carbonara calls for. So just keep at it. We gotta get some color on our mushrooms before anything else happens. So let's go over to the stove and get that going first things first. Our pasta water is boiling. I'm going to throw a couple of handfuls of salt in there. 1 more. And then I'm preheating this pot for about 3 minutes. I want to make sure that the surface of this pot is really ripping hot when I put those mushrooms in, because otherwise it's going to take forever for them to brown. So just put the time in here. We are hot. 3 tablespoons of olive oil. You'll be able to tell when it's really hot when you first start to see wisps of smoke coming off the oil, and that's when you know it's okay to put in the mushrooms. Wait a moment. Here we go. We're smoking in the pot. I'm going to stir to make sure they're all getting nice and coated in that oil. And then now you just got to be patient and let them cook. This is a really key moment. These have been cooking for about 5 minutes. They are letting off a lot of water. You can see it's bubbling, it's steaming. I am not going to touch these mushrooms right now as much as I want to, because that water needs to cook off before they can start browning, and I'm not stirring until they brown. So we need to let these continue to cook. Okay, we've finally arrived and the water is cooked off, and if you take a look in here, you'll see that now we're getting some good old browning. So now it's okay to stir. So we keep on keeping on. Meanwhile, these have been cooking for about 10 minutes, and this is a good time to drop your pasta so that it can cook simultaneously. So I've chosen to use orecchiette for this dish, but you could use any small pasta shape that you want. I just happen to like how the little ears scoop up the little shroomies. Little ears, orecchiette. And the mushrooms, the shrooms get stuck in the little ears, and it's fun. Alright, so we'll just give that a stir. I'm going to set a timer for 2 minutes shy of al dente, because I want the pasta to finish cooking in the pot later on so that it can absorb all of the flavor that we're developing in here. I'm feeling pretty good about the color of these shrooms. Okay, so we're nice and roasty, toasty, golden brown and delicious, and it's time to throw in shallots and garlic. These are going to cook pretty quickly because of how much heat there is going on in this pan, so keep an eye on things because you don't necessarily want them to brown, just to sweat out. I'm going to reduce the heat to medium-low. Stirring pretty constantly here because they're cut so small that they have a tendency to burn, so you want to keep them moving around in the pan. These are at a good place now, and our pasta still has a couple of minutes on the timer, so I'm going to turn the heat off so that they don't overcook and burn. I know I've said it a million times, but pasta water is liquid gold, and you should never let go of it. So in this recipe, we called for pulling out 2 whole cups of the pasta cooking liquid before we drain it. This is your saving grace in creating a really creamy, emulsified pasta sauce, so don't pour it all out. So the pasta has now been cooking for 7 minutes. It's ever so slightly crunchy in the middle, but that's okay because we still got a couple minutes of cooking to do over here. So this is a good time to drain it. You don't have to worry about draining off too much of that water because it's all going right back into the pot anyway. So back we go. So now I will return my mushrooms to medium heat, and I'm throwing the drained pasta in there, along with about 1 cup of this cooking liquid. Adding the pasta liquid to this pot at this point is going to help deglaze the pan and pick up all of that browned shallot, garlic, and mushroom bit that is stuck to the bottom of the pan, and it will then bring it into the sauce so that you don't lose any of that flavor. Pretty much all of that water is cooked off now. So I will turn off the heat now and let this cool for about 3 minutes. So another way to prevent against scrambling the eggs when they go from cold to hot is by tempering them. So I'm gonna add a 1/2 cup of this pretty hot pasta water into my egg mixture, and that'll help loosen them up and temper them a bit so that they don't go into shock when they go back into the pan. Don't rush it. Action! Okay, this has been cooling for 2 minutes. As you can see, it's still really hot. There's a little bit of steam coming off. It's not cold, it's just not piping hot anymore. So now we can slowly stream in this egg mixture. So I'm gonna go little by little, working in circles as I go to make sure that everything gets incorporated and nothing gets stuck at the bottom of the pan scrambling. The cheese is melting as the eggs are starting to cook a bit. And then here's where the reserved pasta sauce comes in handy. I feel like this is a little bit thick still, and so I want to add a little pasta water to thin it out. Lastly, I'll add that chopped parsley, which is nice and bright after all of that deep caramelization that we've gotten on the mushrooms. And then always be tasting. It's great. Just take my word for it. I overheard Chris Morocco saying, even though he hates turnips, he does not hate a cooked mushroom, which I think was his way of saying, can I have some of that pasta?
Yep. I feel like I'm like your pasta person.
You're always here. Andy, do you want some?
What kind
Is this in your diet?
Do you eat carbs on Fridays?
I eat carbs every day.
Yolk to whole egg?
Oh
Whoa.
my god, that's just a little too much parm for him.
I don't think you should be putting cheese on your pasta before you taste it.
I tasted it,
Okay.
so take my word for it. Jeez.
How much yolk, how much whole egg? Like, what's
It's
the...
5 yolks, 1 whole egg. And then, did it need a sprinkle?
The sprinkle of
Doesn't do it
shame.
itself.
It is so savory
Yeah.
between the mushroom and the yolk.
And the cheese and the garlic.
I mean, wow.
But are you missing the bacon?
No. You get good texture from the mushrooms. You brown them well.
Thank you. And there's something about the way they belly up with the orchette that I quite like. So there you have it. Super simple mushroom carbonara. It happens to be meatless, but I'm not going to go around promoting that because that's not what it's about. It's about celebrating these beautiful mushrooms. It has 7 ingredients, and it's a cinch.
Great.
You can make a lovely meringue cookie out of that, or you could make a tasteless omelet out of that. You what? Do you want
That
my
was-
egg whites?
They were about to get a shirtless.
That was classic.
But you guys did it. You didn't get that.
I saw some like lower back.
You guys are pervs, all of you.
Oh, please, you want it. It obviously takes his shirt off while I'm filming. Typical Andy.